Welcome to Ask the Accountant, the podcast that is made for you. Weekly podcast live Mondays from 8:30 a.m., released on the podcast service of your choice on Wednesdays. Your main weekly hosts, Aaron, Patrick, and Johann. Got something to ask? Submit your questions below or ask during the show. Podcast loading. We are currently getting everything set up behind the scenes, so sit back, relax, and we will be with you in a few seconds. Enjoy.
Good morning, Aaron. That was fantastic. Aaron told me this morning, I've done a new intro. It's like, cool, okay. I didn't expect a voiceover. That's fantastic. But yeah, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Accountant. My name's Johann, and I am here with my co-host, Aaron Patrick. Morning, Aaron. How was your weekend?
Yes, good, thank you. Good, thank you. Not as eventful as yours, by the sounds of it, with a little marathon that you ran and everything. But yeah, it was a good little weekend. Enjoyed it.
Good. By marathon, what we mean is I did a Star Wars marathon of films with my wife. So nice, lazy weekend for me. 2 days of high quality broadcasting from the Disney Channel app. Well, what a week it's been. What a week. Last week was busy for everyone. Aaron and I were at Accountex North, busy meeting everybody. I realized when I got home, actually, one day just wasn't enough. In that one day, I did all my networkings, talking to everyone, walked away, and the only swag I walked away with from that day is the Ask the Accountant t-shirt. He says, mirrored, and a bag of goodies with all our branding on. So I needed a second day just to go and get all the swag, it turns out, and to actually talk to some of the providers that I don't normally talk to. How was your trip, Aaron?
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? I think we'll definitely talk about it more in the main part of the show. But at first I thought when I turned up, like, oh, this is going to be a bit of a letdown sort of thing. But actually, you're right. I think maybe even 2 days or 1.5 days, however they could kind of put it together, might be enough. There wasn't enough time, was there? It was crazy.
Yeah, time certainly flew by for us. But so we agreed last week the first thing we were going to talk about in every episode was the feedback from our wonderful audience. Aaron, you were out getting feedback. What's the feedback been like?
Thankfully positive. So it looks like we've got at least another couple of episodes in us. But no, very, very positive. And big thank you to every single person who came up to us during Accountex to say that they listened to the show and gave us feedback and everything else. We've already taken some of it on board as well. Intro being too long, that sort of thing, and the timing as well. There was a couple of people who said maybe 8:30 wasn't ideal. Some of them saying they were still asleep, which was interesting. But yeah, we'll take all the feedback on board. But no, overall, really, really positive. It was great to see people out in the flesh, and kind of going there. There's a couple who recognize you being Mr. LinkedIn, obviously, and saw you, and it's like, who's this guy next to me? But it was fine. I didn't take too much offense to that one, and you know who you are. But no, it was positive feedback, and I think one of the things we're going to definitely, like Johann said just then, is definitely just continue this feedback phrase. Let's make sure that you guys are keeping us accountable. If there's something we say in the show that's not maybe quite what you would agree with, if there's a turn that we're not, exactly pushing to the right buttons, or if there's something we've completely missed in terms of news or anything from that particular week, then please use the feedback form that I'm going to post in a few moments time, and let us know. Keep us honest, so that each and every week we can make sure that everyone in the community gets the same amount of information. But yeah, overall positive. So yeah, thankfully we've got a couple more weeks left of doing this.
We've not been taken off air yet, unfortunately, for our listeners. But yeah, brilliant. So obviously we've got the 8:30 a.m. Monday morning live stream every Monday morning, and then this will go into your podcast channels on a Wednesday. It was a bit delayed this time just because it was the first episode. Apple and Spotify and stuff like to do their checks and make sure it's all good and genuine before it goes out. And all PC, which it was. So I think it hit the podcast channels on Friday. That'll be at 5 a.m. every Wednesday morning now. So it's there ready for when you wake up on a Wednesday, and you can listen back to us whenever you choose. But of course, when you're listening back to us on a podcast, you can't ask us questions live. So make sure if you've got questions you want to ask, whether about small business, tax, payroll, accounts, whatever it is, being in an accounting industry, going to events, is it worthwhile, etc., then make sure you join us live, or post those questions onto the pre-build posts, as we'll call them, and we'll get them answered in the show. A lot of people always say to me, "Oh, is a conference really just a bit of a jolly?" Yes, it is, but it's also really, really productive and useful and great way to spend our time. So Aaron, what else have we got going on today?
Yeah, so we've got quite a jam-packed show today. We've got Accountex North to talk about. Definitely got some feedback from that, and something that we can both bring up and bring some elements to. We've got 3 bits of breaking news. Well, we say breaking news, it's been a week old, and I think everyone's kind of expecting this news to come in. We've got the new Chancellor, we've got the corporation tax U-turn, and maybe some more U-turns to come. And then if we've got time, we've also got a update on SEISS, and see what can go from there. And then if at the very end, we do have a couple of questions as well that we can just rattle out at the very end.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Aaron. Well, as you say, jam-packed show. So let's get started on that first topic. Accountex Manchester, as it's now named. It's not Accountex North, I noted. A very quietly rebranded one. Probably in response to the fact that actually Manchester's not very far north for anyone north of Manchester, which is quite a lot of people. I certainly had to travel 3.5 hours south to get to it, so it can't be that far north. So yeah, Aaron, what's your feedback? What are your thoughts? What are your highlights?
Yeah, so initially for me, as I said at the kind of intro, I was a little bit walking in and a little bit, not disappointed is not the right word, but I was kind of thinking to myself, oh, this could be this could be difficult for a full day event sort of idea. And it's no kind of disrespect to the organization or anything else, but it just didn't feel like there wasn't because we didn't have those big booths like we used to in the other events, where there's those big booths that absolutely dominate the show floor, and then you've got the smaller kind of booths. Everyone had the same size booth, so it was a bit more like, in one way that's good because you're not kind of showing off like the bigger organizations opposed to the smaller vendors, but at the same time it was a little bit like, okay, this was a little bit underwhelming, if you like, when we first walked in. But when you think about what was done from some of the vendors out there, so hats off to Sage. They built up their, what was it, MTD tunnel, was it MTD tunnel of love, or whatever they wanted to call it? I can't quite remember what they called it.
Yeah, they had some kind of blow up tunnel outside that several people wanted to let down. I also thought it was quite ironic. There was a seesaw in there, a ball pool, and a quick reaction game. Ironic coming from such a slow reacting company, but hey ho. So that was outside, wasn't it? And Xero had managed to get their branding across the big side of the Accountex room with underneath the clock outside the Manchester building, and then Sage had got the lanyards. I think QuickBooks were very much questioning why they hadn't managed to snag any of those big branding opportunities. Yes, there was multiple vendors there, wasn't there? But actually, it's the Sages, the Xeros, the Irises, and the QuickBooks of the world that spend the big bucks on these things normally, and take the sponsorship opportunities as soon as they come up. So like we had the Sage Cafe again, didn't we? So basically everyone is walking around with a Sage paper cup. Fantastic move from an advertising and marketing point of view. But yeah, as you say, it felt like a very slow start, didn't it? Like you and I were there at about 9 o'clock and we looked around. It's like, this is quiet. It's small. But actually, once we got to 10:30, 11 o'clock, we looked around again, didn't we? And it's like, Christ, this is really busy now. It's full. So I don't know if people were getting trains in, and that's just when the trains were getting there and stuff, and they weren't there for the 9 o'clock door opening. But yeah, it turned out to be a very, very well attended event, which I wasn't expecting at 9 o'clock in the morning based on what we were seeing.
No, and I think for me, like if you look back at the conferences we've done this year, look at the circuit, like obviously Accountex is always going to be the big one, isn't it? And you can't really compare Accountex to any other conference out there. You have to kind of take it as that's its own little beast. It's gonna have 2-day event. It's going to have that extra bit of extraness to it because it has got such more funding behind it and it's in a bigger location than anything else. But I definitely found this time round as Accountex is about just trying to figure out what's going on in the industry, and it is very much a case of you've got to, it's all going. You've got to keep, you can't rest for a second sort of idea, and you've got to try and get as much done in those 2 days as you possibly can. Whereas I think digital Accountex to a point, and also especially Accountex Manchester this time around, it was definitely a case where you had that opportunity to be able to talk a lot more candid to vendors, and you had that opportunity to actually get, build your own brand and build your own, practice and everything else. And I think you had that more personal touch, I think it was. Whereas Accountex itself, the main one, is just so overwhelming that you don't have opportunity to really think. You literally are just following around, trying to get as much done as you possibly can. So I do think there's definitely room for both of them now, because at one point I was kind of thinking, is it worthwhile going to the second event, going up north and everything else and going to Manchester? Is it worthwhile? But I do highly recommend it to everyone. I think you have that much more of an opportunity to talk to people and talk to vendors and talk to stuff about you and about your practice. Whereas again, Accountex, they don't have time to really go into personal details or anything about what could be right for you. They've got a script almost, because there's so many people that they've got to kind of look after and talk to. I felt this one, I even myself, I was able to talk to QuickBooks, and we actually had a candid conversation about certain issues and certain problems. Whereas in Accountex, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to do that. I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think it's definitely got a place on the calendar. If it is going to be on the calendar next year, I suppose that could be a question that gets kind of mooted. But yeah, it was a good little event, and I was only there for half a day, so I definitely didn't have enough time to talk to everyone and do everything. But you were there for the full day, and by the end of it, you'd still had more to do, hadn't you? Which is credit to the event itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you say, I always remember back, but one of the first conferences I ever did was QuickBooks Connect in 2018. The coldest QuickBooks Connect on record, I think. But I always have this memory of Auto Entry, at the time independent. And they had this huge crowd around them trying to watch this demo, like 50 or 60 odd people trying to watch this one demo on a relatively big screen, but still not really big enough for what they were trying to do. And you just think, well, how much value are both the exhibitor and the attendees getting from that? Whereas when you go to these events like Accountex Manchester, you can have that one-on-one conversation. You're not part of any group having a demo. You're having a one-to-one demo question and answer session. I think that's a lot more valuable than just being stood in a big group trying to lean over and watch a big screen. So yeah, no, I was there all day. I was there from the doors opening to the doors closing. And yeah, I didn't have enough time. Now, granted, some of that was me sitting down having coffees with various people. I had a couple of meetings with guys from QuickBooks. I had a long chat about anti-money laundering and source of funds with Tony from Armadillix, which was a really insightful chat. And we've actually walked away and we've made some real changes to how we process our onboarding and stuff, and some real improvements to our due diligence process for our clients' work as well. But so, yeah, they were really valuable conversations to be having, but it did take us away from, I mean, I didn't attend a single seminar. I had very little in the way of conversations with software providers. So yeah, another day would have been good for me. But my colleague, I took George with me. George is one of our new client managers, and he loved it. He had an amazing day. He went to 3 or 4 different seminars. He spoke to lots of different software vendors. He was loving life. So yeah, if you aren't as well known from a personal brand point of view as people like myself and Aaron, and you can just go around and you're not going to get pulled left, right, and centre because people know what firm you're from and they want to have a chat to get about your firm and what their latest tool can do. Then yeah, you can really get out there and get around all the stands, and maybe one day is enough. But the amount of standing room only seminars I was witnessing as I walked around was phenomenal. Like, they were really popular topics, which isn't something you can always say about every topic at a seminar, I find. But yeah, absolutely fantastic day. Really enjoyed it. And then we had the Iris Big Accountancy Quiz at the end, which was, we won't reveal where we came in that, Aaron, but
you say that, I can see in the background there. I mean, well, in the background there, we've got an award, so we must have won it. I mean, that's, we walked away with
an engraved glass, so we must have won.
Must have won it. I mean, it was a bit hazy, wasn't it, towards the end of what actually happened? But yeah, I'm pretty sure we won it. If anyone asks. Yeah,
no, it was a good quiz though. It was very entertaining. It was nice to see people in the room. So yeah, even though we couldn't pull together a team of 5, it was just a team of 2 of us. We've not got enough friends for that, but hey ho. But yeah, no, it was. I think overall it was a very good event, well organised. Big shout out to John Toon and the DigiTools and Cruel World podcast for organising axe throwing the night before. It turns out I'm equally as crap at axe throwing as I am all other sports, and I found the whole experience very triggering, bringing back nightmares of PE lessons. But it was something different. It was something that you wouldn't expect from the accounting industry when you look at it from an outsider's point of view. Very entertaining, a good laugh, a good group of people. There's about 30 of us there, so that was really good. But yeah, overall, I think these events are always very enjoyable from a social aspect, etc. But they're also very worthwhile and productive from a business aspect as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and you summed it up really well with your kind of LinkedIn post at the end about the quote unquote hangover, even though you weren't drinking at all through the event. But it was, there is a lot of work to be put into these sort of events in terms of each and every person. The vendors themselves are obviously having to put it all together, the organizers, and each attendee will have to, sacrifice a day of work basically for the event itself. So there's a lot of time and energy put into them. But it is definitely worthwhile. It's got that thing, because after each one, I've failed to do it yet, but after each one of the events, I've come away with an opportunity, because you get that time to step back from your own practice and like think about it and think about, actually, you know what? Why have I not thought of this before? Why am I not doing this? Or why am I not doing that? And, you could speak to another practice manager or anyone else, and it could be like, we're doing something this way. And it's like, that's a great idea. So you always come away with something that's going to enhance and improve. Like you've already brought up about your onboarding process for yourself. For us, we think we've finally nailed a better way of actually taking money from clients and being able to put that into an onboarding process and bring that forward. And I think every single event I've ever been to, and I guarantee going forward, I'm going to walk away with it with something that's going to improve our practice one way or another. I think that's, ultimately what it's all about, isn't it? So, yeah, big shout out to Iris for their event. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I thought that was very well organised. Wouldn't have expected it from Iris, if I'm honest. But in terms of having the pub quiz as opposed to just a standard, I don't know, normally it's like just a get together, isn't it? But the pub quiz idea was absolutely brilliant, and it just kind of brought everyone together, didn't it, and gave everyone a bit of a reason to be there. And it was all for a great cause as well, wasn't it? We were raising money for children in need as well. So yeah, highly recommend kind of taking them up on the offer again if it ever arises. So yeah, Countex Norfolk, Countex Manchester, big thumbs up from me. What about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And it's as you say, Aaron, like we always walk away from these events, don't we, with something. But I think a lot of people go in and they expect that takeaway, that big eureka moment to come from a conversation with a software provider at their stand or a seminar which is going to open their eyes to a whole new world. and it often does. However, for me, for the last few events I've been to, most of my takeaways have come from the conversations with my peers. You know, I was having a really good chat with Andy Wainwright, and I was having a really good chat with Simon from Brobent, who are helping QuickBooks to file all the first MTD ITSA stuff. Like, there were some really interesting conversations there, and they were probably the most powerful parts of the whole day for me, compared to rather than going around and talking to software providers and stuff. So when you go to these things, just keep your mind open that it might not be a software stand or a seminar that's going to give you the big eureka moment. But I always say you've got to take the same approach to these events as you should to any business book you might read, and that is actually to take action. Don't just go, say, "Oh, I've done it," and walk away.
Yeah.
You know, go and take action and do it quickly. Like, my team have been bombarded with messages on Slack throughout the weekend with what we're going to do, how we're making differences. I was on the train back from Edinburgh on Thursday with messaging and calling the team and saying, "Have you thought about this? Have we done this? Could we do that?" And it was really productive from that point of view. So yeah, you've got to take action from these things. Don't just go, "Oh, that would be nice," and forget about it and just kind of go, "Well, that's it. That's the event done. Back to the day-to-day grind now." But yeah, huge thumbs up from me. Absolutely fantastic event. Could have gone to 2 days, I think, and I would have made use of both days. I'm looking forward to Accounting Web Live in Coventry at the end of November, start of December. That's on 30th of November, 1st of December. That's a 2-day event. Lots of software providers there, so that's going to be a good event. I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll achieve there what I didn't manage to have time to achieve at Accountex Accountex Manchester. I think that sums up Accountex Manchester. Have you got anything to add, Aaron?
I think my only final thing is it's definitely cemented the fact that we were a little bit worried during COVID that we were going to go back to virtual, or virtual events would become precedent, and that's going to be the way that these things are going forward. But thankfully, and it's a massive thankfully, that people do see benefit from actually the live events, and I think that's going to make sure going forward that they are going to stay around, because at one point we thought maybe that's going to go the way of the dodo, didn't we? So, you know, QuickBooks has still got their kind of monthly or their annual summit type idea is going to be virtual. So we've got a virtual event. What is it? This Thursday, is it?
This week.
But thankfully, I think going forward, you know, majority of the conferences out there are going to go back to in-person events, and we need them to be like that, don't we? They have to be in-person events for us to get the most out of them. So, I'm glad that that's kind of happened.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that, as you say, the industry seemed fairly convinced that all these events were just going to go virtual and stay virtual after COVID. But actually, we've now got more in-person events than we did pre-COVID. So we used to have Accountex and Accountex North. Then we had ZeroCon and QuickBooks Connect. And that was pretty much it and then Zero Sage and QuickBooks used to, and Free Agent for that matter, would then do like a road show where they tour the country with little mini things. But now we've got all of that in theory, and we've now got Accounting Web Live, which is a 2-day conference. We've got digital accounting over in Tottenham. It seems to have been a real resurgence, and rather than going all virtual, it's actually highlighted the value of the in-person events, which is great. I love it. My team love it. They love me going out and disappearing from the office for a few days at a time. Yes, they know they're going to come back to a bombardment of messages and a very excited and giddy me, but they love the peace and quiet for a couple of days at least. So that's all good. Okay, so yeah, big thumbs up to Accountex Manchester. Fantastic event. We look forward to Accounting Web Live in the end of November. So yeah, that's I think that's it, isn't it? Really, it's a topic discussed and exhausted.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, have you been watching the news?
Why, something happened?
I think someone replaced the Chancellor or something. You know, all that planning we did for corporation tax, that's gone.
Yeah, I think we'll put both of these into the same topic, won't we? Because there's not too much to say about the fact that we've had a brand new chancellor. Because he lasted a while, didn't he? What was it, 30? Or was it 30 odd days? Was it? I think that was
something like 4
some
weeks.
Sort of record. Yeah, something like that. I mean, not too bad, not too bad. But yeah, no, I think more than anything, it's just the fallout that's happened from it, hasn't it? I mean, I'll always remember the mini budget that was presented at the time. So if you think back to when what was our new chancellor at the time, brought together a mini budget to try and kind of stop the economy and bring everything bring everything into place. Well, I'll always remember how I felt after the mini budget, because it was all positivity in terms of great news for our clients and small businesses, and there was all these tax cuts here and there that we could help clients and everything else. But at the same time, it was like, well, should we be banging about this? Is this something we should be happy about and showcasing? And I'll always remember I sent a message to a group, and I was like, what's our mood? What context should we put it in? Are we supposed to be happy? Are we supposed to be concerned? Are we supposed to be reserved? And it turns out that we all should have been reserved for it, shouldn't we? It was kind of writing was on the wall at the time, but we didn't know it was going to be this drastic. And yeah, he's now been replaced. Jeremy Hunt's come in. I don't think he's he's not had a full day of proper work yet, has he? It's kind of still kind of getting it all together. But yeah, we've already had U-turns galore in terms of the corporation tax change and everything else. And if the rumors are true and you look at the kind of news and everything else that's coming out, then we're going to have more U-turns as well. So it just, from my point of view, it just becomes very unstable, doesn't it? It's not just for the economy and everything else. And obviously there's a lot to be said for how the pound is doing at the moment compared to the rest of the world. But I think just on a personal level as accountants and looking at how we look after clients, it's embarrassing. Like we've obviously spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we're giving as best advice as we can to clients. And when Rishi put his last budget in, there was so much that we had to change for clients and get them prepared and have those conversations with them. Then we have a mini budget, and suddenly we have to talk to them all again and reach out to all of them again and say, look, it's changed again, and now we're U-turning again. And it's like, well, what are we going to do? It's really, really frustrating, isn't it? Apart from anything else. But yeah, I mean, ultimately the news out there is that the U-turn at the moment is the fact that we've got the 25% corporation tax rate has returned. We're going to have to start thinking about that as a tax planning going forward. And we're back onto that whole story of, do we need to consolidate groups? Should we be getting rid of subsidiaries that aren't useful anymore, and having to go back down those conversations? But for a brief, was it 2 weeks, whatever, however long we had it for, we were able to kind of put that to one side. So yeah, it's difficult, and it just shows from an accountant's point of view how much quicker we have to be on the ball these days. I don't remember it ever being this knee-jerk reaction before. When you think about furlough and self-employed income support schemes and all the grants and everything through COVID, and now we've got these knee-jerk gunshot, shotgun wedding almost type budgets that get put out into the public and then U-turned a couple of days later. As accountants, we need to be making sure we're as agile as we possibly can be. How do we tell our clients that? You did some amazing content and everything on your channel, and we've done content on ours, and we know a lot of other accountants doing that. And if we didn't have that way of being able to put that content out there, then how would we tell each and every client? Gone are the days where we can just wait until the next accounting, next time you sit down with a client and tell them there. You got to be much more quick and agile about it, haven't you? So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting the way that as accountants we've got to be so much more agile than ever before. What's your take on it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, everything changed, didn't it, during COVID? Like, up until COVID, there was an autumn statement and a budget in March, and we'd sit there, we'd watch it, and we'd update our clients. Some of us would do videos and get them out fairly quickly. Others would do newsletters, and they'd come out within a couple of weeks once they'd seen the detail, because what we see on the media is only headlines. It's not all the detail behind it. And then COVID happened, and we got bounce back loans, furlough, SEISS, etc., etc. And you're just like, oh my God, constantly having to try and keep up with it and the changes. And I kind of expected that to die off now. I wanted to go back to more traditional methods, but with everything that's going on, it's much more reactive than it ever has been. And I woke up this morning and the BBC is covering that we're expecting an emergency statement to be made to government today, within the next hour or two. And the overall consensus is that 1p income tax cut's going to be scrapped. They don't think there's going to be anything changing to national insurance because it's already halfway through Parliament. So it's kind of too late to change that now. But yeah, it is just the constant changing. I had a client email me last night into this morning saying, I'm looking at getting rid of 2 properties from April next year. These are my calculations on capital gains. Is that right? I've got to go and call that client in a bit and just go, you know what? As it stands right now, yes. However, in a few months' time, that may not be the case, because we just don't know what this government or the next government or whatever shell of an organisation's there is going to say or do at the moment. Whereas normally you'd go in and go, well, it's a Tory government, so we can expect these taxes not to really move, and these taxes will move. And it kind of is unpredictable, and this is the first time since summer we've been saying this is how it is now. It may not be like that when it comes to the actual event. And we've never put so much weight and emphasis on this is right for now, but it may not be right in a few months' time when it comes to that event. So yeah, it's a challenging time for us, and it's certainly kept our inboxes and phones ringing and pinging. So yeah, we'll see what's said today, and then go and edit all of our videos and go, nope, that's scrapped. That's scrapped. Ignore this bit. That's not true anymore. It might just be easier to take the video down, actually. But yeah, it's certainly been a challenging time for us as accountants. And I think it's all well and good, the media covering this, and we all talk about the impact on our own personal pockets, and that's right. And mortgage rates going up and stuff, but the pressure this puts on the accounting industry, I think, is very underestimated and undercovered. So yeah, it's a challenging time for an industry that I did a survey a few weeks ago. Like 17% of the people that responded wanted out of the industry. They were fed up. They were tired. Whether that was COVID related, whether it was economy related, client demands, people were fatigued and they need a break in the industry. And that break's not coming anytime soon.
No, there's no stability, is there, at the moment? We've got MTD ITSA on the horizon. That's dominating every conversation at the moment, and the pressure that's going to happen on practices and the clients. And it seems to be relentless. And great point here by Paul. I think it's good for us overall, shows value to them, and we're talking about us as accountants and value that we have to our clients. And yeah, it is, but it's becoming so much more difficult to add value if it's such knee-jerk reactions, like Johann was saying about having to put emphasis on, we think this is going to be your tax bill. We can't tell you it definitely will be, because anything could change. And I know clients understand that it's not our responsibility to have a crystal ball and decide what the tax rates are going to be in X amount of time. But we always used to have a good understanding and have a good planning for it. But now who knows? I mean, I'll always remember back to when I first started into accountancy, we were going through the whole 15% VAT rate and 17.5% VAT rate, and then back to 17.5, then 15, then 17.5, then 20. And it was, what we had back then was time to prepare, because we all knew that it was going to change on this date and it was going to move from here. We've been told that it's going to, these knee-jerk reactions and everything that's going to happen. Even the software providers are struggling to be able to keep everything up to date. So us as accountants, we've just got to find ways to be able to adapt and be able to present the data in ways we've never done before. We've even considered putting kind of together, this is what your tax bill would be now, this is what it could be there, but if they change it, it could be this as well, and try and give them like few options that they could look at. And that just increases the workload, increases the room for error as well. We could make a mistake because we're having to look at it in different areas, and have we considered this, have we considered that. So yeah, it's just adding pressure and complexity, and it does mean that we've also got to speak to our clients again about the same topic, but actually having to go about it and bring that conversation to them as well. So yeah, it's going to be a tricky time for us all if we're going to keep having these changes all the time and everything else. And it just, I think really what this showcases is that how important having just that autumn statement, and that the statements that were kind of just put there and they were there and they were always set in stone. I think we need to go back to that stability, don't we? And we need to have that ability to be able to have trust and faith in them. Otherwise, we're all going to just be sat there being a bit confused as to what's going on. So yeah, interesting times. Probably not the best time to be bringing it in when we need stability as it is. But yeah, it's what can we do? We've just got to roll with the punches, haven't we? And we've got to try and do it. But I feel even more sorry for accountants who don't have that, social media ability just to be able to bring out an updated video instantly. For people who do have to kind of go back to kind of traditional ways of contacting their clients, that's going to be a lot, even more pressure on them as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, like I was speaking to someone last week and they're saying, well, this all impacts next year, so you've got plenty of time. It's like, normally I'd agree, but the national insurance change, that's this year, that's mid-tax year changes. Like, we've got to deal with that. That changes not just next year's tax projection, but this year's tax bill changes because of that change. So yeah, and we're even spending more time now talking to our clients about their employees and their payslips than we've ever done in the past, because the employees are asking the employers questions about national insurance. And so when am I going to see this change in my payslip for the 13.25% dropping down to 12.5%, blah blah blah. Like even that, the threshold for national insurance, that changed into the tax year. It didn't change at the start, like most changes will happen. So not only is it we're having to react quicker, we're now having to talk to more people about it, because actually the employers have got as much of an idea as anyone else. So we're having to then support them to support their employees to understand what this all means.
Yeah, interesting times. And like you said, we've just got to keep our wits about us, don't we? What news is going to come next, and then how do we react? How do we get that to our clients on a a more simpler basis? So yeah, it's going to be strange.
You do get to a point though when you can start predicting this stuff. I mean, I woke up Friday morning, Claire, my wife, said to me, "Oh, have you seen the Chancellor's been called back early from his meeting in the US?" It's like, not looked at the news yet, but I can guarantee he'll be sacked by the end of the day then. To which she said, "Oh, you won't. You don't know that. You can't." It's like, you wouldn't call someone back from a meeting like that unless you're going to sack him or make a big announcement of some sort. And she texted me at lunchtime saying, "Oh, you were right." It's like, yeah, I know. Like, once you start watching this kind of stuff, you start understanding the trends and you can see what's going to happen. And yeah, I knew the Chancellor was having meetings all weekend at Chequers with the Prime Minister, so I kind of expected something to be announced today. So yeah, let's see what happens around 10, 11 o'clock today and see what they come out with. But
yeah.
Who needs Hollyoaks and dramas when you've got the BBC News to watch?
Exactly. Yeah, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be something that we can get to our clients quick and easy. Next news topic that we have today is a bit of a warning, a bit of a shock to people to kind of think about what they're going to be doing. And this is all around SEIS grant, so the grant that was provided during COVID for self-employed income support scheme. And that is, from my knowledge anyway, it's the first person who has gone to tribunal through HMRC has taken to tribunal, has been forced to repay the grants themselves. So $4,500 was paid back. Now, in this particular case, when you kind of look into the details, and to me, it was a slam dunk case anyway. It was open shut. They basically already had a limited company. They weren't using the self-employed scheme, rightly or wrongly, I suppose. And then this comes down to kind of stuff we were almost debating in ourselves in our own practice. Do we recommend this to certain people? But because as a limited company and as the support that you were getting as a close limited company, we didn't get that, did we? As a director's salary and director's dividends, you weren't getting the support that your self-employed peers were getting. So reading between the lines, it looked like they kind of took that into their own hands and they tried to emulate their self-employed income support scheme, or their the amount that they were owed, got caught, and ultimately have been forced to pay it back. And I think this, more than anything, is just going to show, or I think HMRC are trying to put a statement out there to say that, if you have taken grants that you shouldn't have taken, then you've still got time to repay them. So in all of our self-assessment forms, we've got the opportunity to repay. From what I can tell, if you make the repayment there, that's the end of the conversation. There's nothing else that HMRC will come after you or anything like that. But if they do come after you, they are going to come after you in a harsh manner. So I think it's just taking that opportunity and that warning. I know from our point of view, from our kind of client base, I can I can say on probably one or two hands people who may have been a bit questionable of should they've taken their claims or not. I think a lot of them were very sensible in it, especially towards the ends, and they weren't taking grants when they shouldn't have taken grants, that sort of thing. So hopefully it's just a case of there's a few out there that have abused the system and rightly should be looked into, but I think most people should be absolutely fine, and as long as you've got that justification for it, then you should be fine. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how quick this was. I thought this was something that's going to take years and years down the line until we see any news about it, but we've already seen news on it, so maybe a good thing. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a few issues here, isn't there? The speed they got through the tribunal and stuff, that was interesting, considering how slow HMRC normally are. So they obviously needed a case study and a proving point. But I think part of the problem comes from, I don't know if this individual had an accountant, but does it really matter whether they did or didn't when the accountants weren't allowed to file for these claims themselves? So we weren't allowed to file on behalf of our clients. So we could advise our clients, and most of our clients asked us about it, and we, like, grant 1 and 2 was a slam dunk. Yes, go for it because of the impact on your business. Grant 3, 4, and 5, we certainly saw a tailoring off. I don't think any of our clients claimed grant 5, but that's to my knowledge because we weren't filing these claims for them. We weren't. We could have turned around in a meeting with our client and said, "Do not claim it. You're not entitled to it," and the client could have gone and claimed it anyway because it was them making the filing, not us. And then, interestingly, I've seen cases where accountants are being asked by HMRC to now should this person have claimed it or not. So, well, we don't know because we weren't privileged to the first process. So yeah, it may be if accountants could have filed these, there would have been a level of sense checking. I think it's the right terminology there. That yes, this can be claimed. No, that can't be claimed. And if we, as accountants, turn around to a client and said, "Look, you cannot claim it. You're not entitled to it," but we got the impression they were going to claim anyway themselves, and we have reporting methods and structures in place to deal with that. But because we weren't involved in any part of that, then we couldn't assist and aid HMRC in this process, which in hindsight might have been a mistake. But yeah, if you've made the claims, HMRC, because of the pressure from the media and the government about fraud during these cases, HMRC have got the mandate to go after you, and they are going to be sense checking all of this. So if you've made a claim genuinely and then it turned out actually, now I've looked at my accounts, we weren't entitled to it, you need to just tell them and get it dealt with. because if they catch you, they're going to come after you and they'll question all the other claims as well. So, yeah, it's not unexpected that they've made a case study out of it. The speed they got it through was quite interesting, but yeah, we'll just have to do what we can to support clients in a process that we weren't involved in, privy to in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting that they went for the self-employed income support. I suppose that's the easiest one they could go for, isn't it? Because it's easier to kind of decide if it was right or wrong that they were claiming it for. But there's the other grants and the other ones that how long have we got until they start coming into fruition as well? Because you don't have an easier mechanism to repay those ones anyway. And it was also, I suppose, especially like the £10,000 or £12,000, whichever one it was, the ones relating to your rates and everything else. And I assume at some point that's going to be looked into, and that one could be even more difficult to kind of find and ascertain, because that was you think back to how that was claimed in the first place. That was an email to your, what most of the time was email to your counsel, wasn't it? So yeah, it's going to be a tricky one, I think, to kind of see how that one goes down. And I know a couple of furloughs have already been kind of looked into, and we had a client who it all turned out absolutely fine, but they had an investigation on their furlough and everything else. So yeah, it is going to be one of those where I think we've got a long kind of tailwind to this, haven't we, of how long it was. And it's going to be interesting.
I think historically, so if we look at the furlough ones, historically HMRC wouldn't have looked at investigations that weren't worth a lot of money. So I think we've had 3 furlough investigations we've helped clients through now. And one was found no fault, no issues whatsoever. One they'd overclaimed by £36.50, and the other one they'd overclaimed by £180. Now, historically, I would have argued HMRC wouldn't have bothered with that because it wasn't worth the money it was going to cost for the investigation. But they obviously have no minimum target of how much they're going to get back on these things. They're just investigating anything they suspect isn't right. In regards to the council ones, I'm not sure who's going to take responsibility for looking into those ones. Is it the council's job, or is it the government's job, or HMRC's job? We don't. Yeah, I think that's just a write-off. I think councils have got enough problems on their hands at the moment with understaffing and underfunding, without having the resources to investigate to make sure every single claim was genuine and valid and met the rules. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, they were given a part of money and they were just trying to dispute it, weren't they? That was the kind of the way it was at that point, wasn't it? So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think also with this, it's one of those where, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, it gives, like you said about the idea that the accountants weren't able to file their CIS grants and stuff like that. That was just down to the tech at the time, wasn't there? Wasn't a facility for us to do it, so that's why we weren't given that idea. But hopefully, they're going to learn more and more about going forward with this new digital first approach, is give us that opportunity to see that data as accountants. Like we said this at the time, like more than happy, or I said I was part of like a committee for it for ICAW, and it was like, look, I'm more than happy to kind of understand that we can't as accountants do it on their behalf of the clients, but we need to be knowing what's been claimed so that we can complete their tax returns next year and everything else. And that was never built, that was never put into fruition. But I think HMRC need to learn from this, like all this new digital front first MTD and everything else they're talking about. Like the positives coming out of there, and the bit that we need to take from this is that we need to see easily what HMRC sees as accountants. For us to do our job, we need to know what people's P60 figures are digitally. We need to know if they've claimed these grants or whatever grants are going to come down the line, and we need to be able to see that should be, as an accountant, that should just be, I can't understand why we're having to, argue or at least like have these conversations at this point in time. Like we should just be able to log into a portal, see that, and that gives us that ability for us to do the job for our clients. So hopefully that's what people have learned from it, and hopefully that means that the systems that are being built are going to be more robust and gives us that data.
Fingers crossed. But it's a government organisation. I'm not sure they're going to have the same learnings from it as a small business work that we might. But hey ho,
because on that we've been playing with the the ability to be able to add P60 figures to clients' data automatically using the new APIs and everything else from HMRC. And all it's ended up doing is that it's at the moment such a long-winded process for getting that data in that we might as well just ask the client for a P60 because it's actually going to be more efficient. So, we've got to keep pushing at HMRC and building these systems to be more robust, but also give us an opportunity to be able to get access to that data more efficiently as well. Because at the moment it's just not working. So, not talking to one another.
Yep, sounds about right, doesn't it, for HMRC?
Yeah, pretty much.
But like one of my team messaged the other day saying HMRC VAT helpline's down.
Yes,
great,
yes, yeah.
Fantastic. Just what we need. They only open 4 days a week as it is, so to then have an outage on one of those days, it doesn't help. But yeah, cool. Well, that's everything on my news list. Aaron, have you got anything else you wanted to add? Any topics?
No, I think that's covered the topics for this week.
Brilliant. So what is next on the agenda?
So next we're going to go to our Q&A section. So as always, make sure that you get your questions into us, either live via the chat. So we've had people like Paul add into it to some of the conversation topics. But if there's any questions they want to ask, they can add in there. But also remember that you can add your questions to us via the link tree. So that you should find the link tree at the bottom of every one of our posts that we've got. And from there, you can ask a question and submit some feedback. We've got one of them, Chloe from Facebook Lives asked the following. I work a full-time job and run a company outside of work. I barely take any wage from my company, like a couple of £100 a month, but I still need to do my self-assessment. How do I put these two income streams together? I think the easiest way to answer this question, and these are sort of questions that we can kind of just answer and give you some insight straight away, is that it's just people misunderstanding what self-assessment's all about. I think the more and more that we kind of get people who are taking on their first gig mentality job, like maybe Uber or Twitch streaming or YouTube or anything, and they've got this new incomes that new form of self-employed income they've never had before, people aren't 100% sure of what self-assessment actually is. And in a nutshell, self-assessment is just you looking back in a particular tax year and reporting every piece of income you had in that tax year. And I think it's that bit that people get confused about, is that every single bit. So even though that you've had pay slips every time it's been taxed, even though you've had other forms of income coming in like interest and everything else, all that needs to be included on that tax return for that particular tax year. And as soon as you get around your head that it's about making sure that every piece of income needs to be consolidated into one return, then it starts making more sense about how tax returns work. You can have multiple self-employed income streams. You can have multiple income streams. Your tax return can be 1 page long or few pages long to multiple pages long. It's all going to be what you've actually had in that tax year. So I think the best thing to get your head around is the fact that self-assessment is looking at a year in totality and trying to put every single income stream on there as you can. Anything to add that, Johann?
No, I think you're completely right. And I'm going to pay HMRC a credit here, but if you're not using an accountant or anything and you go and do your self-assessment on your government gateway, actually it's quite a lot easier now than it ever used to be. So you used to get this huge form through the post and then you had to add extra pages. Whereas now you log into your government gateway, you say you want to do your tax return and what year you're going to do, and it asks you a series of really simple questions like, were you self-employed? Okay, if you said yes, how many different self-employed businesses did you have? 2, right? And then it bases the amount of paperwork you got to do on that questionnaire. And you just go through it like a wizard on setting up a computer or something. It's dead simple. So yeah, don't be scared of it. Just log into your HMRC portal, answer those questions, and it will then guide you through what you need to declare. So if you've said in this case you've got a self-employed income and you've got a PAYE income, it will go, right, here's the first bit. Tell us about your PAYE income. It might even go, this is the information we've got about your PAYE income. Is this right? And you'll need to check your P60, P45, whichever you've got, and just finalize that off. Because ultimately, it's your SA100, your self-assessment tax return, is confirming the information HMRC have already got and updating them with information they haven't got, which is normally your self-employed income or something. It is a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's getting more clever over time as well, isn't it? It's already bringing in bits they already know and stuff like that for you, which is good to see. So yeah, it's easier than ever, and there's a lot of guides out there as well, isn't there? So plenty of guides out there for you to be able to look at it. And I think that's it. I think we do have a couple more questions, but we're going to save them for next week as we're kind of coming towards the end of the time. So again, if you do have questions, stick them in and we'll make sure we get them answered for you.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much everyone for tuning in today to episode 2 of our live broadcast. Aaron, what have you got on the week ahead for yourself?
Yeah, so this week we've got quite a few live videos to get done and dusted. We're going into kind of trying to be a bit more personal as much as we can. So like we've just bought a new electric car, so we're trying to see what benefits we can get from there, from putting it through the business and everything that goes from there. So we're going to be quite excited about that video. That should be quite a good one. And then we've also got some other projects, including potentially some merch as well, very limited run merch run as well. So that's quite exciting to put together. So yeah, looking forward to getting that information there. I think it's your typical week. In fact, I'm looking forward to this week because we're not going anywhere. We're not got any kind of conferences or anything. So it is just get my head down, get some kind of work done, and try and catch up as best as possible. What about yourself, Johann?
Yeah, no, I've got various client meetings throughout. The diary is looking quite light this week, which is always nice. I don't like an empty diary because that's when everything hits the wall. But a light diary is a good week. So yeah, I've got various meetings, client wanting to buy another business. So I need to look over their financials and help them with structuring that. A few tax meetings, ironically, after what's going to change today, who knows? And then we've got QuickBooks Connect on Thursday. I don't think we're expecting any big announcements or anything there, just a reminder of everything that's out there, and probably quite a heavy focus on QuickBooks Advanced after that launched a few weeks ago. So yeah, no, that is my week summed up basically. And then I'm off to go and see Joseph and the wonderful technical colour coat at Edinburgh Theatre on Friday night.
Nice.
Being cultured. So, I might argue my marathon of Star Wars movies was cultured, but the wife would disagree.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's it. I think that's everything for today, isn't it?
Yep, look at that. 57.5 minutes in as well. Nice. Well, thank you very much to all of our listeners. Thank you for everyone that has sent in comments and questions on the live feed. It's always nice to know we've got people out there listening. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all next week, where we will update you on any news that's happening over the last week, and go from there. So yeah, thank you very much. That's goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me. Cheers, everyone. Bye.